The Heckler format is one of the oldest and most reliable conventions in live stand-up comedy. The audience understands it the moment it begins to activate. Someone in the house speaks during the set. The comedian stops. The crowd's attention sharpens. The comedian addresses the interruption, usually with the specific register of improvisational verbal precision that the form has always celebrated, the demonstration of quickness and intelligence and the comedian's ownership of the room. The crowd responds. The heckler is managed or absorbed or dismissed. The set continues. The format works because everyone in the room knows the format. The heckler knows the format. The comedian knows the format. The crowd knows the format. The crowd has taken sides before the comedian opens their mouth, instinctively, in the way that rooms take sides the moment they sense a conflict beginning. And those sides are organized around the expectation that the comedian will demonstrate the specific competencies the format is designed to exhibit. In a mid-2000s show, a packed room, a set running at the quality that Katt Williams's circuit-built material produced, a heckler spoke up. Mid-bit, not during a pause or a transition, during the bit itself. The kind of interruption that arrives at the specific moment when the room's attention is most fully organized around the material, and that the room receives as a rupture in proportion to the degree to which the room was inside what was being ruptured. The room knew the format. The crowd's attention sharpened in the specific way it sharpens when the heckler moment begins. People who were there have described looking up from their drinks, looking toward the stage, sensing the shape of what was about to happen before anything had actually happened yet. And then Katt Williams stopped, set the bit aside, faced the direction the voice had come from, and what he did next was not what the format produces, not what the crowd's organized expectation had prepared them to receive, something the room had not come carrying space for. Here is the first thing about what happened in that room that changes how the rest of the story should be understood. It was not a comedian versus heckler exchange. The heckler format was present for exactly the moment it took the room to realize that the format had been set aside. The heckler answered the question, not with the defensive posture that a heckler adopts when the comedian manages the interruption in the expected way, the specific contracted posture of someone being called out in front of a crowd that has taken sides against them, with something more uncertain than that. The quality of a person who has been asked a real question in a public setting where they had not expected to be asked real questions. What the heckler said in response to the question is not, in the accounts of the people who are in the room, particularly important. The content of the answer is less important than the quality of it. The specific quality of an honest, slightly uncertain, slightly surprised answer that a person gives when they are asked a genuine question rather than being subjected to a format that manages their interruption into an occasion for the crowd's laughter at their expense. Katt Williams received the answer. He was quiet for a moment, not the deliberate, performance-organized quiet of a comedian using silence as a tool within the heckler format, but a different kind of quiet. The kind that a person is in when they are actually thinking about what they have just heard. And then he said something back to the heckler that was not a punchline, not a put-down, not the specific kind of verbal precision that the circuit builds and that the heckler format is designed to deploy. Something that the people in the room have described consistently in the specific language of people who received something unexpected. It was kind. Not performed kindness, not the kind of warmth that a comedian deploys strategically to manage a difficult moment in the room, genuinely kind. The kind of thing that a person says to another person when they have asked them a real question and received a real answer, and want the exchange to go somewhere honest. The room, which had been in the uncertain suspension of waiting for the format to resume, arrived somewhere it had not prepared for. Not laughter, though laughter came eventually, the particular warm laughter of a crowd that has been given something real and is responding to the reality of it rather than to a joke. Something before laughter. A beat of recognition. The heckler laughed too. Not the defensive laugh of someone who has been managed by the format and is performing good sportsmanship in the way that hecklers do when the crowd's laughter is turned against them. A different laugh. The kind that happens when a situation has turned out to be something other than what you entered it expecting it to be, and the other thing is better. To understand what Katt Williams did instead of the format, it helps to understand what the format would have produced and why the format would have worked. The Heckler format, in the hands of a comedian who has built their career on the circuit, who has been in many rooms and handled many interruptions and learned from the circuit's specific training what the management of a heckler requires, is not a difficult situation. It is, in its way, an opportunity. The interruption becomes a demonstration of the specific competencies that the circuit builds. The quickness, the precision, the ability to read the room and calibrate the response to the specific quality of the interruption and the specific character of the crowd. The crowd in that room had come for a Katt Williams set. The crowd knew, before the interruption, the register of what they were inside, the specific kind of comedy that the circuit's development had produced in this particular comedian. The heckler format, handled with the skills the circuit builds, would have been continuous with that register. A demonstration of the same quickness and precision and observational intelligence that the material had been demonstrating in the preceding portion of the set. The crowd would have received it as an extension of what they'd come for. What Katt Williams did instead was not an extension of what the crowd had come for. It was something adjacent to it, related to it, but organized around a different quality from the quality the heckler format produces. Not the quickness and precision of the comedian managing an interruption, the slower, more deliberate quality of a person who has decided to have a conversation. He asked the heckler a question. Not a rhetorical question, the kind that the comedian asks in the heckler format to establish dominance and produce the crowd's laughter at the heckler's expense. An actual question. A genuine question. The kind that requires an actual answer. The room did not know what to do with an actual question. The heckler, who had been organizing themselves around the expectation of the format, the quick comeback, the crowd turning against them, the management of their interruption by someone who had done this many times and knew how to do it quickly, also did not know what to do with an actual question. And that moment, the moment when the crowd and the heckler both realized that what was happening was not the format, is the moment that the people who were in the room have described most consistently in the years since. The set resumed. Katt Williams returned to the bit that had been interrupted. Not immediately, not with the sharp transition that the heckler format's management usually produces, but with the specific ease of someone returning to something after a genuine detour rather than an obstacle that has been cleared. The transition was soft. The room moved with it. What the accounts of the people who were there consistently describe is the specific quality of the room after the heckler exchange had concluded. The particular warmth that a crowd carries in the portion of a show that comes after something unexpected has happened and resolved into something good. The crowd that had been organized around the expectation of a conflict received, instead, a brief, genuine exchange between two people, one of them a performer who decided not to use the format available to him, and one of them an audience member who had walked into a conflict and found something kinder on the other side. This is the thing about the Heckler moment that the accounts return to most consistently. The heckler came back to the show the following week, not to heckle, to see the set. This is the specific outcome that the Heckler format is not designed to produce. The format is designed to produce the crowd's laughter at the heckler's expense, the demonstration of the comedian's verbal quickness, the establishment of the comedian's authority over the room. All of those things can coexist with the heckler finding the experience negative. They do not require the heckler's goodwill. They require only the crowd's. What happened in that room produced the heckler's goodwill. Not because the comedian deployed a more sophisticated version of the format, because he set the format aside and had the conversation that the format exists to prevent, the one in which the heckler is a person rather than an occasion for a demonstration of verbal quickness. The heckler returned the following week and sat in a different seat and did not speak during the set, and stayed afterward in the post-show cluster near the stage. The person who told the story of the week before had become a person who came back the week after. Comedy's Heckler format exists for good reasons. It protects the room. It protects the set. It establishes the comedian's authority over the space in a way that keeps the audience's investment intact. In the hands of a skilled comedian, it can be one of the most entertaining things a live show produces. What Katt did in that room on that night was not a rejection of the format. It was a demonstration of something the format does not demonstrate. The comedian's ability to read a room well enough to know when the format is not what the room needs, and to provide instead the thing that will leave the room better than the format would have. The crowd walked out of the show that night carrying something specific, not the memory of a heckler being managed, which is a pleasant thing to carry out of a comedy club, but the memory of a comedian who had seen someone who needed a conversation more than they needed to be managed, and had given them the conversation instead. The heckler came back the following week. That is what the decision produced. The format would have produced laughter. The conversation produced a person who wanted to be in the room again. Both things are worth producing. A comedian who can choose between them is a comedian who understands what the room is actually for.